Wilbur O. Galitz, who's a technical author that specializes in interface design, wrote a book called The Essential Guide to User Interface Design. It was published on April 10th of 2007, and in it detailed when a business decided to try and redesign one of its window UIs for its employees, it saw a jump in productivity from 25% to 40%. That's an excess of $20,000 in funds. Interface design evolves much like art does, and it affects you on your everyday life. In my speech, I will first be going over the basics of interface design, the evolution of interface design, and finally the future of interface design. First, I will be covering the basics and concepts of interface design. Interface design is comprised of many complex concepts, but a lot of them can be boiled down to two: input and output. The input is the act of the user giving a system a piece of data. It's usually done with tools like keyboards, mice, trackpads, and fingers if you're on a touchscreen device. Output is the act of the computer taking the input and turning it into a readable language for the computer. It then analyzes it and decides what to do with it. It's displayed on a tool like a monitor, a TV screen, or a phone screen. Usability, a government resource for user interface developers, published on their webpage titled UI Design Basics, that the layout of your website decides how efficiently and effectively it's used by your consumer. You have to know your user to develop an effective and efficient design. This is done by gathering stats on users and examining how they interact with your designs and how you can make them more streamlined for the user. Now that you know a little bit of the basics on interface design, we're going to move on to the evolution of interface design. Sophie Anderton, a senior graphic designer, posted on her blog that in 1995, when the internet was just beginning, we saw a lot of plain white backgrounds, walls of text, and out-of-place images. As developers matured more, we saw them trying to teach their users how to navigate websites more efficiently with big oversized buttons and heavy on gradients and solid colors. Moving on to the two that you guys might remember is the skeuomorphic design. Nick Babich, the editor-in-chief of UX Planet, on website UX Planet, published on his article in July 26, 2016, that skeuomorphic design tries to mimic that of physical objects, often using shadows or shading to bring more detail out on the button. A good example of this is the iOS 3.0 calculator. A flat design, Sophie Anderton details, that is comprised of many symmetrical shapes, like circles and squares. It's made up of solid, soft colors that avoid hard-hitting colors and straight lines to bring your eyes onto the important details of the page. Now that you know some of the evolution and history behind interface design, we can move on to the future. Some problems that Antti Olasvirta, an associate professor at Aalto University, and Abwad Gregory, a professor at Georgia Tech, point out in their journal, volume 49, published on the 4th of July of 2016, that in the future we will begin to see smaller, more implanted technologies, and how will humans interact with something that is the size of a red blood cell? The second problem that we face is more sophisticated AI design is being researched currently, and we have to deal with the fact that how will humans give an input to something that doesn't necessarily need an input to make a decision. Now that today I have told you about the basics, the evolution, and future of interface design. Interface design evolves much like art, and it affects us in our everyday lives. In the coming years, you will see solutions to the problems mentioned and improvements upon the history mentioned.